Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap-up presented by the Gokhstein News Network. I am your host, Landy, and today is August 29th, 2025. We're looking at Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. There is a few important things to talk about here for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I will also check very quickly on Sol. But something pretty important is happening here in terms of structure on the weekly. We do have, well, not confirmed yet, but we do have the potential, and something that is going to become very highly likely and was already technically in place with last week's closure, and that is a swing trend break. Now, I've seen many people already kind of proposing this as, this is now a downtrend. It is not a downtrend yet. It is a swing trend break, with the last higher low swing being at the 112 region, 111,900. And then, of course, the higher high swing, so the higher low to higher high swing at 124.5. Now, I've mentioned this a few times, and if you've been watching any of these videos for any length of time, you know that my target above 123 was 123 to 125. We did hit that target. And we are moving from an expansive posture on a weekly back into a compression with low volatility. So there's a few things that we need to kind of discuss here. On a close, and I'm going to get rid of this. This is just to illustrate that the swing trend is broken. And that does mean that the next most likely thing that the bears would be looking for and the bulls want to avoid is, now that the swing trend, the uptrend on a swing basis is broken, is the bulls don't want to see a lower high relative to the last swing higher high at 124.5, right? Because that would be a reversal. Right now, this would be a swing trend break or a downtrend break, or an uptrend break into a potential downtrend. So let me rephrase that. We have an uptrend, and in terms of swing trend, it is now broken, right? And it technically was broken last week coming into this week, but we're getting follow through on that. And where a reversal setup for the bears would happen would be on any lower high relative to the last swing higher high. And that, of course, is at 124.5. If we look at this as closing trend, this is a complex high. Yes, there is internal swing trend in here, but this is still just a complex closing high. And the big area to pay attention to is the last closing higher low to swing higher low. So that's going to be at the 101 region to that 98, 225 or so. Now, we've talked quite a bit about these areas of interest, and Bitcoin has now come back and tapped on the basis band, which is right around a very important daily level, around the 107 to 108 level. Now, I've been talking about this below the weekly closing high here at 109, where Bitcoin kind of played around the 112 high here with this low. And then we had a little bit of a front run before going and making a new all-time high. We had the inverted hammer here, and then the dip into the closing high and of course the swing high here at 112. So 109 to 112 as the zone. We've now seen it break below, which puts Bitcoin squarely in the area of interest between essentially 104.5. You can call it 104 to 105 on the close over here, to where we see price trading right now around the 108.4 level. And this is an important area on the daily and the weekly. Now, just below there is the next big closing area at 102.5 before getting to the low here on a closing basis of the last higher low on a close at 101. So in order, we do have some supports right below where Bitcoin is trading now, that it is trading below the closing high of the prior weekly higher high as it relates to the most recent complex high on a closing basis. But we have the next big area also trading inside of these two swings here, the 109.360 and the 108.4. The next big area to look out for to the downside is going to be essentially 104 to 105, around this 104.5 close open high. And then, of course, just below there at 102.5 And then in order, we would look at that 101 to 98 to 25 or 98 to 101 if you'd like. Now that is right around excuse me, right around a very interesting area. Moving from band expansion into compression, we have the lower first standard deviation right below $99,000, essentially right in the bottom side swing area of this last higher low and a close. So this is an area, this is all lining up in terms of confluence. Now, this week, if we do see Bitcoin closing above the basis band, I would expect the lower first to start moving up and possibly even above the 101 level. But it might, with the basis band right here, we might just see a further compression right into 101 or look to the next high, the lower high, lower than the 104.5 to that 102.5. Now, this was a prior important zone for this range over here, and we'll kind of dig into that a little bit here. But so far, the alarm bells aren't really going off right now. If we do see something like, we have the uptrend here, right? And we have the swing trend, for instance, and then we see a lower low swing trend and then a lower high, right? Not saying that that this is going to be the low. It could come even lower, for instance, and maybe even test down a little bit lower. But it's all about the next, it's all about the next high, right? If it is a lower high, then the alarm bells will be sounded, right? Because then you're looking at a reversal, because we have on this current structure, we have a lower low swing. The lower high swing would be the actual reversal setup. And of course, it would have to be a swing and then a closing lower high and so on and so forth. Or a swing lower high with even a closing higher high. We'd have to exercise caution, especially with this coming from an expansion into compression. Now, there is another scenario as well to be aware of, and that is that any closes back above the upper first are going to start, or even around the basis band, are going to start to get compression into a range. And then we can look to the upper second and lower second as the main areas of interest, wherever they are. Currently, the upper second is at just above 125 there, just shy of 126. And the lower second is down here at 90,000. Now, just below the lower first, we do have an area of interest from the prior range around 95 that was acting as a pivot, and I believe is still the pivot. If we were going to go ahead and do some fixed range stuff here, and we can take it from, I like to take it from the breakout. I know some are going to be different. We're going to end up with the same results either way, but the breakout above the 73.835 high over here, so the breakout candle on the weekly. And you can see here that just below $98,000, we still have a pivot right around $95,000, $96,000. This is dependent on the chart that you're looking at, whether it's going to be futures or spot. In this case, I prefer the spot chart. Some are going to take the just totality of the range after the breakout. Some will take the whole structure on the move up from the last major monthly low, which was down here at the 74, at the 48. I'm sorry, no, it's the monthly low is this area here. So it is the 80,000 or 82,500 or so to the 74, 420.69. So this would be the big area. This is where things change, right? If we start to see break of structure on the monthly time frame, of course we can track that weekly. But right now there's no alarm bells to be sounded just yet. I know that there's a lot of bearishness on the timeline. Top is in, bigger players say that they sold off, entire threads about the reasons why. And, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I do think it's a little too early to call. And it does pay to be cautious, right? You can always get back into the market if things turn out more bullish than bearish. But in this case, many that do adhere to cycle timing theory are starting to sound the alarm bells, right? I think it's a little too early. I'm taking more of a confirmation approach. And and still tracking the market. Now I'm still short. I didn't close my shorts at the weekly. I took a lot of profit, of course, into the big weekly level. I did open up a long position off of the weekly and took profits and moved my stop to profits out of that position, and still short, waiting for the market to show some signs that it wants to bounce a little bit to get into a scalp trade, maybe even a swing trade later on the long side as a hedge against my short. But I'm still short this market, and I have been for a while, as I've noted here on the on these videos, since the highs kind of came in. And this is where, if we get into kind of the local structure here on the daily, you can see that we came right down below the weekly here. We did close below it on the daily, and get just below the lower second standard deviation down here. Let's actually get the arrow so I can help you make sense of this this mess of support and resistance with bands. But you can see that this is where this move originated from, right? So we had the 112 high, we had the actual structure being built there with some lower low and lower high structure before the reversal. Many people are calling it a flag. I don't really trade patterns, as you know, but yeah, it would be a valid flag. I don't know if it actually hit target. We could always see the poll to actually look at it, but more importantly, what I'm looking at is this is the origination of the actual move from the daily to new highs, and this area being retested is not necessarily bearish, but you would want to see the bulls fight back and at least try to close the weekly back above the previous closing highs at 109 to kind of preserve a chance to go and hunt and maybe even break the downtrend on the daily. From here, as it stands, the downtrend on the daily would break on closes, on closes back above around 113.5, but the bulls still have a lot of work to do, right? But at least and closes above there, we could see a downtrend break on the daily. This is where, if we do see things start to fall apart here, though, the next big area to look to the downside would be anywhere below this lower second. We have that area again right around 104 to 105, and that is a weekly area. It's also a daily area of interest. We have a higher low structure right there. Could it dip below to the 1272 on the macro? Sure. But realistically, the next biggest area, and we do see that there is some volume and some candles that kind of oscillated around this area and then found it as support temporarily. It did knife through a few times to both sides. It did act as a bit of an inflection point, but the next big area below 105 for me is the last weekly higher low at 101 to 98,225, that red zone. That's the last weekly closing higher low from the close at 101 to the swing at 98,225. That's the area that the bulls want to see hold up. If we see a close below there, then we do have an uptrend break, right? And then that makes what I was talking about on the weekly with lower high reversal setups on a swing or a close, something that you really do need to watch out for. But as it stands right now, I'm not sounding the alarm bells until I see closes below that area on the weekly time frame. Swings below wouldn't look great either because of the current swing structure setup with the break on a swing. But, and it would increase the likelihood of closing a lower low down below there, below that 98,225. I know there's a lot of people looking for 95 and 90, and even that's a longer form consolidation and possibly compression that could result in downside expansion. That's what I would be talking about at that point. As it stands right now, the bulls still have a chance. It is the end of the month, moving into a very, very important month. One of the things that we saw come in today was not ISM manufacturing, is actually PCE. So now PCE came in as expected, and what the market wanted to see was for it to come in under, and that's kind of one of the primary inflation metrics that the Fed uses. And this is where I'm just going to pause for a moment here. We'll turn off the support and resistance, have a little bit of a conversation. Now, I know that, and I've said this on Wednesday and Monday as well, that many are looking at prediction markets and economists that are saying, you know what, Powell's Friday speech was, very much a change in tone, and it was, dovish, and that we're expecting a 25 basis point cut in September. I still am 50-50 on it. I think we need to see, especially after PCE today, what would have increased the chances of that was PCE coming in under, right? And not just meeting expectations. And that's why the market really sold off in TradFi, which still looks really good, by the way. If you go look at those monthlies and on Dow, NASDAQ, and SPY, they look pretty good. But the likelihood of a cut, I think, does hinge on this data that came out today for PCE, and is going to hinge on some of the ISM data and some of the non-farm payroll stuff that's coming out in the first few weeks of September. And I'm 50-50 on a cut for September. I still do think that we will see a cut. If we don't see it in September, we will see one in Q4. And I think it's probably going to be around 25 basis points. I also want to point out that for those that want to kind of get an edge on what the market is predicting, and be careful, because the market can be wrong, right? And we're seeing that, we've seen that many times before, but the Monday 13 and 26 week U.S. Treasury auctions, keep an eye on them, because they've been pricing in a cut. And, with some of the economic data that's coming in, they will react very quickly in markets to make the appropriate moves as needed, even if they do come in and price in a cut on not Monday, but Tuesday now, because Monday is a holiday. So just be very careful. Don't set your hopes on something that has a moving target and incomplete data that the Fed will be evaluating as that data gets completed and reported, right? So, but yeah, so far, I think that a lot of people are freaking out a little early here. That doesn't mean that they're wrong, by the way. But I think it's a little early to be calling highs. And we need to see at minimum a weekly structural break on a close that could lead to a monthly structural break. And by then we will have already kind of, it's past tense at that point. We would know the high is in. But right now we don't have any structural confirmation. We did hit our targets, 123. We were looking 120 to 123, and then 123 to 125. We essentially hit the 125 target. We can pat ourselves on the back for that. And now we just wait to see how things play out going into September. Let's go ahead and, by the way, I did want to point out that on this structure here, even if we do see a downtrend break, what you want to see is it doesn't even matter where price goes from there, right? If we see a downtrend break on the daily above 113.5, we need to see 118 recovered and Bitcoin playing back in the range up here. Shorts kind of lose their cover above that 120 to 121 area and have to readjust. We likely would see some acceleration of that readjustment for positions, on closes above 118 as well. But if you do see a downtrend break, 113.5, and I will have a Monday update as well. I will be doing the macro Monday either way, even though markets won't be open, but we will have futures open. And of course, crypto trades 24/7. And in this case, getting back above and breaking a downtrend, if we do see something like that coming into that Monday session or during the Monday session between when I'm talking to you now and then just, be aware that we have to see then the reversal setup, which would be a higher low or equal low as it compares to wherever the lows come in, right? So that's pretty much all I got for you on Bitcoin. Let's go take a look at Ethereum. And I know a lot of people are in disbelief. They're like, well, what if they're right? And the market it's all over. I'm not really in that camp. There's no confirmation yet. I'm still looking at this cycle as playing out through Q4 to Q1 as being the cycle timing. And I'm open to this being an extended cycle. And before I actually go to look at Ethereum, let's cover that real quick here, because I think it's important. We're in a compression. This is going to play out in one of two ways. We're in a compression on the monthly. And that compression is either going to resolve to the upside above the upper second standard deviation and 124.5 here, and start hitting some of the deeper targets and getting expansion, 128 to 130, 138 to 140. I've shown that many times, and 148 to 150. We could see that, we've got the upper third up there. This is going to move up over the weekend as well on the monthly close. And, as long as structure is intact and we see higher low and higher high structure, and we see closes above, especially 82.5, and warnings below there, because that's right where the basis is, and the basis will be above there for the monthly very shortly here. And of course, the swing structure at 74, 420, 69 on spot. Nice. Then the bias would be that it has the potential to still try to re-expand back to the upside here. Otherwise, the only other way to get expansion would be to break structure and start expanding down. And, that's a bridge that we can cross if we start to see that occur. But so far, this is a compression in the bullish half of the bands here for the monthly. And I want to draw your attention to the quarterly. We still have not hit expansion. I got to go to the index chart for this. We have not seen expansion yet this cycle, whether you're using the bull to bear cycle or whether you're using the halving cycle. We have not seen expansion on the quarterly yet. So that would be biased towards a one-way breakout, in my personal opinion. Even if we were to nuke down to 50K, we still would be in a bullish setup for the quarterly. It'd be breaking structure, swing structure, and all that. But realistically, the only way for it to expand would be up. And that's something that is keeping the door open. And one of the reasons why I say, even though the liquidity cycle, I still am seeing all of the same signs for the liquidity cycle in traditional markets and in crypto as being a Q4 to Q1 timeframe for cycle highs. The door is wide open, especially for Bitcoin here, to keep on marching. And going into whatever you'd want to call it, a prolonged cycle, a super cycle, whatever you'd want to term it. I don't really care, but we haven't seen that expansion yet. So, and that doesn't rule out that we wouldn't go into a longer bearish period, but definitely bullish and looking for wider expansion in the longer term. This would be an ugly quarterly, by the way, so we do want to actually see this not close like this. That's going to hinge on September's closure at this point, in my personal opinion. I don't see us, we'll see what happens over the weekend, but I don't see what some are hoping for this weekend. So definitely looking to September. Let's go look at Ethereum, and then we'll check up on Solana here. So we'll go to ETH. ETH is back below the 4,400 zone, essentially the 4,384 level, down by the lower first. This is a lower high to no matter what would be a lower low swing. So there is a bit of a consolidation look. And you might remember I've said this is actually what I want to see. Now we can pick out the criteria. It's very, very simple. For Ethereum, we are back into kind of a range and a bit of a compression look here on the bands. Back above the upper second standard deviation at that 48.67, closes above there, and the current all-time high at 49.55 would kick off expansion again. I'd be looking 5,500 to 6K, and then up to 6,500, and swings above our fair game at 66 and above there, at a 1.168, which is 16.8% above the prior cycle high. Anywhere above there, then we're looking at likely substantially higher targets. There's a 172 just shy of 8K at 77.50, and then there's a 1414 just shy of 10K. And then for those that want to be really bullish, up to the 1618, 14 to 15K is fair game. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to occur on just closes that hit expansion. We need to see close over close expansion above the all-time high and the upper second standard deviation on the daily that leads into weekly expansion to the upside. To the downside, any closes below the lower second, we're looking down towards the 4100 level right by this low, possibly down to 4K. Anywhere below there, we're looking 3900 by the lower third to 3930. If that does drop, there is a daily level of interest that you saw price oscillate around the 3750 to 3600 area. If we did see that drop, look for 35 at this low side structure down back to that 786 where we did see a nice move on expansion back into compression and retest of this 786 at just below 34 at 3375. If that area fails, we're looking more likely at pretty intense expansion down to 3K 2700 level. It's 2930 to 3K and then around 2700. That's a big area. And for right now, Ethereum still looks strong in this area. It could still come down towards that 4K or even 3900 down here by that lower third. I wouldn't want to see expansion below the lower second that starts to lose 3900 because then it's expansion into the next big area. But, it could still just, pick itself up, try to reverse off of some of the high side structure and then right around that weekly structure as well. And when looking at Ethereum and Solana, which you want to see moving in tandem, we did get a close open. And Solana looks pretty strong here still. Nice uptrend. Still needs to hold the last higher low at around 185. You can take 187 or any closes below 190 as like caution. But it's above the upper first here. It can safely come down to like the 193 to 195 level, especially on closes, and still be fine, still be in the bullish half. But realistically, you want to see continued closes back above now 210 rather, and then of course above the 217 to 220 area. Start pushing up to 225 by the upper third. Closes above there would initiate expansion. Then we can start talking about targets up to 250, which is this line up here, or right around 250, 253 is the actual area. So that would be kind of my take on that. But if we do see the last higher low dropped at around 185, look right to the lower first, just below there, and 180. Anywhere below 180, it's going to be testing down to 175, and then potential for that lower second, 170 to 172. Start dropping that, we're looking back to 165. So that's what I've got for you for this Friday. I think, it does pay to be a little cautious right now. And we'll, as price develops on the charts here, the conversation will evolve. But I do want to I'm sticking to my guns with this. The big thing that you need to look out for is weekly structure right now. And any kind of bounce off of here that results in a lower high swing is something to pay attention to. But right now, this is just a complex high, and this is nothing new. This was confirmed last week, right? So this is a lower low swing already coming into this week. This is just an extension of that. And the big area to pay attention to, 101 to 98,225. Closes below there. Swings don't look great, but closes below there are what is most important, because that would be a structural break on the weekly, and that would break this particular uptrend. So we'll see how things go this weekend into the monthly close. I will say that for the monthly close, we are still trapping between those same areas that we just talked about to the downside. Upper first is currently at 101. And the upside here is just above, right around that daily level that I talked about, where shorts kind of don't have cover and really have to reposition, and that's at 121. This is going to continue up 80,500. The basis band is above the last swing higher low on the monthly at that 74,420.69, coming in at 80,005, almost 600. This is likely going to substantially increase somewhere around the upper 80s. Mid to upper 80s. And I'd be looking for this lower first to start accelerating towards this high side structure pretty soon, probably somewhere around the mid to upper 60s here on the next closure. But we'll check in on that on Monday. I could be off on some of those in my estimations, but I have been looking at this stuff for a while. We'll see where it ends up. I hope you all have a wonderful extended weekend and a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care. Talk to you Monday.